Well, what's up again there, guys? Brent here, the Three Topics Gamer, and I have another awesome rankings list to share with you guys today. Now, over the course of this month, there's been a lot of speculation and rumors of whether or not we will be getting a Mass Effect remastering. Now, I personally would like one, but heck, no one up top has officially said, not EA or Bioware. I've seen several sources say, heck, they're going to do it. I've seen several sources say it's a rumor. I've seen some other YouTubers talk about this. So I thought, with all this speculation about a possible return of Mass Effect trilogy, I thought how great would it be to actually do a worst to best ranking. And there's only 4 official games, so this ranking is going to be relatively short, but heck, I think it's going to be pretty constructive. So before I jump into my personal ranking, I would really appreciate if you give this video a thumbs up, and do not forget to press the subscribe button if you happen to like content like this and would like to see more moving forward, or heck, some content I've done in the past. Now, before I jump into my ranking, I'm just going to give you guys a bit of a head up that this is my personal opinion, and I have seen several rankings of these 4 games. And I'm pretty sure most of you will probably feel the same way. It's probably going to be a little bit different from my ranking, but heck, what the hell. So, without wasting any more time, let's jump right into the 4th, and in my opinion, my least favorite entry in the Mass Effect franchise. Ranked lowest on my list might surprise many of you, but this spot unfortunately has to go to the very first Mass Effect. Now, its placement on my list is based mainly not so much on the game itself, but more with the timing in which I eventually ended up playing this game. As a mainly PlayStation gamer, I was introduced to the franchise with Mass Effect 2, and due to the fact that the first Mass Effect game was never released on the PlayStation 3 until the Mass Effect trilogy came out after the series had finished in 2012, and at that time I had already checked out of the franchise. I wouldn't feel the need to go back and play this game until after I finished Mass Effect Andromeda on the PlayStation 4 in 2017, meaning that I didn't even play the first Mass Effect until nearly a decade after it was first released. And out of all of the 4 Mass Effect games that there are, this is the one that I enjoyed the least. Now, when it comes to the game's story, everything about it is great. Seeing Shepard meet his crewmates for the first time, all the difficult decisions that Shepard has to make, experiencing Shepard's battles against Saren, and first hearing about the Reaper's threat, all that is executed wonderfully. It certainly has a far better structured story than Andromeda does all around, but where the game is at its weakest, at least for me, was with its gameplay. The combat throughout the game wasn't all that great, the exploration portions were poorly handled, and some of the RPG elements were just not good. Even some of the character voice acting performances I felt were a bit underwhelming. But again, I do not think this game is bad, and perhaps some of the blame can fall upon myself for not playing this game sooner, because I think if I had done that, I think I would have had a much more higher appreciation for it. But out of all of the Mass Effect games that I have played, I felt that this one was the one that felt the most like a grind due to its gameplay style. If the story wasn't as great as it was, I probably would have never finished it. Many people view Mass Effect as the Star Wars of video games, and I personally believe that that is a perfect comparison, because if Mass Effect 1 is the new hope of the series, then because its sequels are so vastly superior, I can actually skip this game and jump right into Mass Effect 2, and that game does a solid job at least mentioning the more important plot points that happened in the first game. And if we in fact do get a Mass Effect remastering for the current gen consoles, then I would have no issue skipping this game and jumping right into the much more vastly superior sequel, which is why the first Mass Effect game is ranked lowest on my list. Rank 3rd on my list is going to have to go to Mass Effect Andromeda. Now, I perfectly understand why most people would easily say that not only is this an awful game, but it should easily be ranked as the worst Mass Effect game out there. But I'm probably one of the few individuals who's not afraid to admit that I did not hate this game. Yes, there are some story structure issues, and yes, it has a very weak and generic villain, and yes, it has a number of serious technical issues when this game was first released, and the development for this game was really bogged down with problems, and perhaps some of us can take the blame for perhaps overhyping this game. But for me, there is just enough good for this game to the point where I can say that I did enjoy playing this. There is enough here that not only would I would have enjoyed a sequel to Mass Effect Andromeda, but there's certainly a few aspects that I think are actually better here than in any Mass Effect game, certainly when it comes to its gameplay. Now, for starters, I really did enjoy the crew of the Tempest. 2 characters in particular I would easily say are within my top 5 favorite Mass Effect crew members of all time. And though the overall story is not well paced, when it's actually focusing itself at times, the game's story can actually be really intriguing. But above all, I would openly admit that the gameplay aspect for me is without question my favorite out of any Mass Effect game. Now, I've seen plenty of videos showing all of the glitches that the game had at release, and to be honest, my playthrough had hardly any of those issues come up. The combat, exploration, and RPG elements are executed extremely well, which gave me several hours of enjoyment. Even the multiplayer I found was very addicting at times when I was playing online with my friends, and any game that is managing to actually get me to play multiplayer should get some extra respect points from me. Overall, when one looks at this game on its own and separates it away from the original Mass Effect trilogy, while still flawed, I still believe that it does a good enough job to stand on its own and apart, giving Andromeda its own unique identity, which is why I'm more than honored to place it third on my list. Ranked second on my list is going to have to go to the final part of the Mass Effect trilogy, which is of course Mass Effect 3. Now, despite all of the controversy that the endings of Mass Effect 3 brought us, the fact that BioWare went out of their way to at least attempt to fix this problem really shows how much they really care about not only how the fans feel, but wanting to give this series the respect it deserves. When one considers the difficult task this game had to achieve in the form of bringing an end to so many character arcs that were presented throughout the entire franchise, when one looks at this game in its current state, I think that most people would agree that though Mass Effect 3 is not the perfect ending we all would have hoped for, it is far from being a disappointment, and in my opinion, it is a solid and satisfying conclusion to such a compelling story. Getting to experience and witness Shepard unite all of the species to battle against the Reapers and fight alongside all of his allies that you have made across this series is really something you don't see much from most AAA franchises. Even the DLCs are well worth the price of picking up, especially the Citadel DLC, which perhaps is one of the greatest DLCs that I've ever played, giving us one final chance to go on one more adventure and gather together all of your allies that you have made throughout the entire series and go to perhaps one of the best parties that I've experienced in a video game. The gameplay this time is without question the best within the primary trilogy of Mass Effect games, and the voice acting performances across the board are on point, which ultimately helps the game make every victory achieved and every loss really matter, which is what, in my opinion, gives it its number 2 spot on my list. Ranked number 1 and the best Mass Effect game in this series is undoubtedly Mass Effect 2. Now, going back to my Star Wars references, Mass Effect 2 is indeed the Empire Strikes Back of the series, and as I said earlier in the video, this is the game that allowed me to be first introduced to the Mass Effect series, so heck, if it wasn't for this game, I wouldn't even be a Mass Effect fan. While not the most refined entry from a gameplay perspective and not the most visually impressive entry for obvious reasons, it certainly elevates itself above its predecessors and follow-up in just about every other department, with the only big flaw in my opinion is the fact that I didn't have more time to spend with my main girl Liara, but I guess we made up for that in Mass Effect 3. From a story's perspective, without spoiling too much, it's just fascinating having to work with Cerberus and bring together some of the most dangerous combatants that we can find in the Battle of the Collectors before the Reapers arrive and try to wipe out all of the species that we know. And what more could you ask for in the middle chapter of a trilogy? I also believe that Mass Effect 2 brought the highest number of memorable characters that really leave a serious impression on the franchise in the forms of characters like Mordin, Legion, and Thane. And the Elusive Man is really one of the most interesting and intriguing non-playable characters that I've seen in a sci-fi genre video game. Speaking of characters, I think that this is the one that I actually tried the hardest to not get anyone killed, so I believe that out of any entry in the franchise, I believe I spent the most amount of time playing this installment. What ultimately makes Mass Effect 2 stand out to me is the fact that it is the only entry, in my opinion, that properly balances all its departments and executes them at a high enough level of quality that one should expect from a AAA title like this one. Mass Effect 1 had a great story, but its gameplay was lacking to me. Andromeda had incredible gameplay, but its story wasn't strong enough to support it. Mass Effect 3 had a great balance of both, but couldn't quite stick the landing. But Mass Effect 2, despite its limitations, managed to surpass all other entries, which is why it will always remain my favorite Mass Effect game of all time. And that concludes my official ranking going from worst to best of the Mass Effect franchise games. Now, I'm sure spots 2 and 1 won't surprise many people, but maybe spots 3 and 4. I'd like to know if you guys could rank the 4 Mass Effect games, how would you do it? However, if I could be pretty specular, I'm pretty sure some of you guys will just go Andromeda 1, 3, then 2. But heck, maybe I could be wrong. Maybe some of you guys will surprise me. Again, share your list with me and everyone else in the comments down below. And like always, thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I will see you next time.